some of you already know me from the information even that we had in October time in the Whittle Hall, and some of you would know my name from queries, from interviews, from all those little things that have been going on in the last few months within our lives in relation to admissions. So I'm the academic selector, so I work alongside Sandra in admissions to try and get everybody through this process. So I just want to say firstly thank you to everyone for registering and attending this evening. And it's so lovely to see the names pop up, so many of which are familiar because of the admissions process. I'd also like to say thank you to Emma for setting up tonight's virtual event, and to my colleagues Joe Duffy, Lorna Montgomery and Sandra Bloomer, who are presenting here with us this evening, and they will cover their different aspects as we go through this evening. So firstly, I want to say congratulations for getting to this stage of the process. I know it has been very, very challenging. It's always a challenging process, regardless of what else was thrown at you, but you all embraced it. And we had, first of all, the strike action was one of the things that made things quite difficult for people this year, because a lot of the interviews had to be postponed and rescheduled. And just whenever we were about to start to do that, we had COVID-19. So obviously that changed things again for us worldwide, not just for us in social work. And we had to very quickly agree regionally a new way of continuing the process. So obviously you all embraced the process either as face-to-face interview, a virtual one through Skype, or through WhatsApp, as some of you did, and also some of you did the video interviews. And I just want to say thank you for everybody for embracing that, because I know it wasn't easy for some people and there were a lot of technical issues, and hopefully we were as supportive as we could be throughout that process. But you're all here now at this stage, and it's so good to be able to host this event, albeit virtually, for you this evening, because I think it's so important to help you tune in to what's ahead, but also hopefully to keep you motivated and enthusiastic about your new career. So this is our agenda for this evening. So I'm only going to talk for the next 5 minutes, and then I'm going to hand over to Dr. Joe Duffy, who is going to tell you the programme overview. So Joe is one of the programme directors for the relevant graduate route, so some of you will get to know him extremely well over the next few years. And then I'm going to hand over to Dr. Lorna Montgomery, who is the director for practice learning. And I know students always have questions in relation to practice learning, or placements as they're commonly known. And then I'm going to hand you over to Sandra Bloomer, who is the manager for admissions and access. And then, as Emma has already said, at the end of each of the presentations from Joe and Lorna and Sandra, we're going to deal with your questions in relation to any issues which come up through the chat box. And then we'll have some time at the end for a more general Q&A session, or just to mop up any issues. So please feel free to put your questions up there in the chat, and then we can hopefully make sure that everybody's leaving here this evening with all their questions answered. So what are our unique selling points? And really, I suppose it's something that we're very proud of. And I know some people joining this tonight are sitting with offers for more than just Queen's. And I suppose really it's just to highlight some of the unique selling points that we have. And it is really in terms of our ranking within the UK in relation to social work. We are highly ranked. And we have a very highly motivated and committed staff team. And I can say that with real genuineness, hand on heart. I've been part of the staff team here for 10 years, and I absolutely love it. I've only ever stayed in a social work post for 4 years and rotated every 4 years. And I would never dream of leaving Queen's because of the nature of the team and the nature of the work that we do. We all have, as social work lecturers, we all have teaching qualifications, and we all have our social work qualifications. So in the same way that you have to register with the Northern Ireland Social Care Council, so do we. And that's just to make sure that we're live on the register as well. And we're adhering to the standards in the same way that you're expected to. All the academic staff at Queen's and in social work have their PhDs or are working towards them, and we're all part of the elite Russell group, which means something to some people and means absolutely nothing to other people. But it is just to say to you that that is really important in terms of the quality of the teaching that you receive and how we deliver our programme. We do offer competitive international travel opportunities, and these are offered every year. Obviously, with the current situation, it's very hard to know what that will look like in the future, but we do hope that obviously those will come back on whenever we get on top of COVID. Direct service user involvement in our teaching is a really crucial thing. And that's something actually that Joe Duffy was involved in and initiating all of that, and is still heavily involved in promoting user involvement, both regionally here and internationally. And he can tell you all about that whenever he is teaching you in the future. And we also have our service users involved in assessment and feedback, and that's, for example, in one of the modules that you'll do in semester 1. So I think that's something that my tutees always really value, is the feedback from the service user perspective, and that means so much to them. And you have the same personal tutor for the duration of the course. You know, I think that's really important. So when you have those that first semester and you really get to know your personal tutor, and we get to know you, it's so important whenever you go out in placement, or when you're going through your modules and maybe you hit a few bumps in the road, or you've just some queries, you have that one person that you can connect with as a first port of call before you would speak to other staff. And I think those are really good, strong relationships that we take pride in. And we always feel very precious about our tutees and the wider student group. We also have a student peer mentor scheme within social work and others and with across the school. And that's a really good example of how some of the students in the second and third year can support the students coming in first year. And it's that point of, you know, no question is too silly, and it's always sometimes easier to ask one of your peers and a peer mentor who's been through the programme, and they maybe have a greater sense of what the issues might be for new students coming in. And also, one of the key selling points for why stay in Northern Ireland and why study social work in Northern Ireland is that students who are domiciled in Northern Ireland can access the Department of Health Student Incentive Scheme. And it really surprised me last year to learn from Michael Burns, who facilitates this in the department, that not everybody applies for this non-means tested student incentive scheme, which is rather significant. And there'll be information on the slides from finance about that as well. And we are a Belfast-based teaching university with excellent library and accommodation facilities. And that's something that the university invests heavily in. And it's something, again, that we're very proud of as well. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Dr. Joe Duffy.
Thanks very much, Audrey, and hello everybody. This is a great opportunity to talk to you all, and this is our first time as well as a team actually talking to our offer holders in this way. So it's a great privilege to do it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk you through the curriculum and what you're going to be taught over the duration of either the 3 years of the course if you're on the undergraduate route, or the 2-year relevant graduate route. So if you bear with me, I'll try to summarize this as best I can for you. So if you try to imagine the social work degree as a series of stepping stones, and those stepping stones are all about building your knowledge very gradually from year to year. So when you come in the first year, we do introductory modules, and that's that's the terminology we use. So each module lasts for 12 weeks. So you're in semester 1, when you start, you're doing 3 modules in total. So you've got introduction to social work, you've got law for social workers, and you've got preparation for practice learning. So the emphasis there is on the development of your skills and on your knowledge. The module that I have responsibility for is law, and so that's, as Trefethic refers to, that's factual knowledge that you will be getting, because you really need an underpinning background of legal knowledge so as you can understand the statutory functions of social work. Your introductory module then is introducing you to the range of contexts within which social work occurs, locally, nationally, and internationally. And then your preparation for practice learning is focused on getting you ready for your skills and theoretical understanding that you need for going into your first period of practice learning. And Lorna will talk a bit more about that, obviously, in the piece that she's looking after. But for the relevant graduate route students, that first period of practice learning commences in January of 2021. And for the undergraduate route students, that occurs in August later on in 2021. So if you can imagine, you're on this upward trajectory all the time in terms of building your knowledge. And then for the undergraduate route, after Christmas in January, you start in then looking at the sociology, psychology, and social policy. And these are really, really important modules that underpin the theoretical basis and theoretical understanding and policy understanding that you need in order to further ground your knowledge as social work students. And then once you've got that semester finished in August, as I was saying, the undergraduate route students then progress into their first period of practice learning in August, which is 85 days. And as I say, Lorna will then talk to you further about that. Then when you've completed your first placement, you come back to us again then in January of the following year, and you then commence 3 further modules. So you're looking at social work across the life course and the sort of theoretical understandings you need in regard to the various transitions that we all make throughout life. We also look at social work and context, so the various contexts that social work occurs in. But at this stage, you're then developing a more sophisticated understanding of power and power issues and power relationships, and how they traverse the various ways in which we work in different contexts. And then the other module that you look at is research, policy and practice. So we're going to look at the important role of research in terms of advancing our understanding in social work practice. And we're also trying to cultivate and develop research mindedness and research skills in you as social work students coming to the end of your second year with us. We then move into the final year, and so as you can imagine, things are happening very quickly here, and this is blocked for some reason I can't see. So it's social work in adult services, again a very specialist area which Audrey takes responsibility for, so that will be looking at the range of different adult social work, social care contexts within which social work occurs. You're then also going to be looking in a very specialist way at social work with children and families. And this is the area, that's my background. I was a senior social worker before I came in to teach in Queen's in 2006, and I worked in the area of children and families. Quite a lot of our newly qualified social workers go into work in the area of family and childcare, as well as other areas, obviously. This takes a deep dive into the skills and knowledge and theory and methods that you need in terms of working with children and families. And equally then, social work and criminal justice in the courts highlights the important statutory functions that social workers have, given that you're officers of the court. If you go into work in probation, in particular, this will be very helpful for you. But equally, there's a really important skills focus in terms of the skills that you need whenever you have to go to court to provide and present evidence. So that's the 36 months duration of the 3-year undergraduate route in terms of all of the modules that you would be studying. The 2-year relevant graduate route then is slightly different. Obviously, it's a 2-year course, and it doesn't have some of the modules there that are covered in the 3-year program. And the reason why, obviously, is because our 2-year relevant graduate route students are coming to us already with a relevant undergraduate qualification, and therefore that our assumption and our understanding is that you students, the relevant graduate route students, will already have covered a lot of areas like sociology, social policy, psychology, those areas that I referred to in the previous slide. But when you come to us in September, again, you're doing the introduction to social work. You're looking at law for social work with me. And again, you're focusing in on the skills you need for practice and your first period of practice learning in January of 2021. You then go out in your first placement for 85 days. Then you're back and you're doing those 3 specialist modules with adult services, children and families, and criminal justice and the courts. And then you're concluding with your final placement. And when you say it like this, it all comes across as being very quick. And actually 2 years does really fly past. I'm the program director for the relevant graduate route, and certainly will get to know you very well throughout this period. It's a great course. Both routes are fantastic. They're very, very well taught, and we have a very collegiate and very supportive, very experienced staff group as well involved in this. So you were in very safe hands, believe me. In terms of this wee slide here, I mean, both routes, whether the 3-year route or the 2-year route, these are 3 very, very important cornerstones of professional practice. I mean, you obviously have to have ethical practice, which is underpinned by your application of social work values. We want to see you being critical thinkers. We want to see you being able to work with and assess and be able to cope with competing priorities and needs. And in doing so, we need to see you promoting anti-oppressive practice underpinning everything you do, because you are on a professional course which is imbued with trust and safeguarding, and ethical practice really walks with you every step of the way on your journey as a social worker towards professional competence. And in terms of professional competence, you need to understand individuals, groups, and society. You need your knowledge and skills for social work practice, and you have to be very attuned to promoting and protecting well-being, because fundamentally these are the cornerstones of professional practice in social work. And as I was saying to you earlier, being a team leader in a busy child protection team, for me as the team leader, professional accountability was absolutely vital. You have to be accountable for your practice, understand what accountability means, and have that with you every step of the way on your journey. And you can't do that without understanding the social work role, and also being able to think about your practice, which we refer to as reflective practice, and also making sure that everything you do is informed by evidence. And again, we have opportunities within the teaching to look very, very closely at evidence-informed practice and what that actually means. Hopefully you're with me so far, just coming towards the end here. The social work degree was introduced in Northern Ireland in 2003, and the first year of running this was actually in 2004, September 2004. And at the time it was described as a generic qualification. And the images here on the screen show you the generic ways in which you can work. There are so many different contexts that you can work in. And the qualification being so generic as well, and enabling you to work in so many different fields, also equips you to work not only in Northern Ireland, but elsewhere around the world as well. So it's a very, very good qualification in that regard in terms of the way it was designed. So in terms of social work at Queen's, just this diagram here just highlights some of the key features of our course at Queen's. Practice development days, just starting from the top. You have to do 15 of these over the duration of the course, and these are opportunities for you to develop your practice in ways over and above those the teaching and the understanding and the knowledge that you'll encounter in the course. So maybe opportunities that you're getting outside of the course that we can actually accredit you for in regard to practice development days. As Audrey said, we're proud of all of the international opportunities that we have stitched into the course. We have really, really good partnerships around the world, in North America in particular, but also in Europe. And we would be encouraging our students to have a very broad international outlook, because at the end of the day, social work is an internationally defined professional occupation. As Audrey mentioned as well, one of the areas that I specialise in is service user and carer involvement. And this type of experiential knowledge sits equally with other types of knowledge that you will encounter in the course. And it's a very, very important aspect of your learning, and something that we're very proud of in Queen's in terms of the way we work with colleagues who have experience in terms of being on the receiving end of social work, receiving social work services, or being carers. And that's a really, really important source of knowledge, and with which we work very, very carefully with in the course. The personal tutoring model is a very, very good one as well, and it means that you've got a personal tutor who's going to be working closely with you over the 3 years of the course, who will get to know you very well, who will be a great friend and support to you, in terms of your journey throughout the course over the 3 years or the 2 years. And that's a great system that we have, and it's a very, very important and core part of the social work education experience for our students at Queen's. The peer mentoring as well is something that we're very proud of and that we work really hard at, and that Lorna has particular experience in working at as well. And again, that's very, very important as well. And as Lorna said, or Audrey said, we're all very research active. A lot of us work very, very hard to be specialists and leaders in our field internationally. And again, that's a very, very important part in regard to being evidence informed in the way that we teach ourselves. Obviously, social work's an interdisciplinary activity, so you will notice a very strong golden thread of interdisciplinarity running through everything that we do in our teaching. Another area of specialism that I work with in the teaching is trying to ensure that our students understand the adverse impact of the period of our recent history called the Troubles. And we work very closely with WAVE, where we bring in people who have lived experience of bereavement, injury and trauma, and they talk about those experiences and the importance of students to understand the way in which individuals continue to live with these impacts of the Troubles to this day. So students have a sharpened understanding of the currency of those issues that happened in the past and how those issues can still form an aspect of the present within which people still require ongoing support. So at this stage, it's also important for you to get your head around some of the core reading. And I really couldn't recommend these books enough for you. I mean, Pamela Trevithick in particular there is the core reading for the preparation for practice module. Cool Shed a Norm is a very, very established book. Many of you have probably encountered that already, but it gives you a great basis in terms of your understanding of social work theory and methods, as does Parker and Bradley, social work practice assessment and planning. And you'll notice that those will be referred to in a lot of your module guides. And Barbara Teeter, who's a professor of social work at Staten Island University in New York, is one of our visiting honorary professors. And you will get to meet her actually over the duration of the course. And her book, Applying Social Work, An Introduction to Applying Social Work Theories and Methods, is a great read as well. So I would definitely recommend that you start to familiarise yourself with some of the readings, and that way it'll not seem so daunting for you when you actually come to study with us. So that's my piece explained to you. Hopefully you've got a sense of what the course looks like through that sort of panoramic view that I give it. So I'm now going to hand over to Lorna.
No, Joe, you're going to answer the questions first.
I am.
You're not getting away that easy.
I'm not. So are there any questions?
Yes, I have some. So one question was, how long is each module?
Each module is 12 weeks.
Okay. What percentage of coursework and exams are used for assessment?
The majority of the assessment is coursework. There are some modules, including my own, where there is an examination, and the research, policy and practice module as well has an exam, but the rest of the modules are continuous assessment. But obviously in preparation for practice as well, you do have to pass role play assessment in week, I think it's probably week 10 or week 11 in the first semester. So the majority of assessment is through assignment.
Great, thank you, Joe. And is the RGR programme recognised in the Republic of Ireland?
Yes, absolutely, yes. As I said, our courses are recognised in the south of Ireland and also right across the world. But obviously, if you want to work in the Republic of Ireland, you then have to fill in. You have to register with an organisation called CORU, C-O-R-U, which is the equivalent of our regulatory body, the Social Care Council, and we then have to provide evidence that you've met the curriculum requirements to be qualified social worker, and we do that frequently for people who want to work in the south.
Great. How many hours per week or per day are students in class for the modules?
It's a full-time course, so there will be days when it will be more full on in terms of teaching, but we also respect the fact that students do need study time as well built in. But you will get your timetable once you start, and you'll be able to see where there are gaps. Wednesday is a non-teaching day from memory, and you will also see that there will be other opportunities and other gaps within the working week where you'll be able to study. But the bottom line is it's a full-time course.
I suppose one of the easy things I normally would say to people, Joe, is each module represents one day of teaching. Wouldn't that be an easier way to calculate it?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I suppose how many hours then? So what would a teaching day look like in terms of duration?
Well, I'll give you an example just of my own module. I mean, when you come in the first semester, law teaching starts at 10 o'clock, and the lectures go from about 10 until 12:30. And then we have an hour or so for lunch, and then the tutorials start in the afternoon. They will go from about 1:30 to about 3:30. So we'll be finished at about 3:30. But most modules conclude around 3, 3:30. Probably the latest would be 4 o'clock. Especially the skills teaching on a Friday goes from 1 o'clock to 4.
Yeah, and I suppose for level 3, as Joe mentioned, I do adult services, so we start the lectures at 10 until 1, and then the tutorial is either 2 till 3 or 3 to 4, depending on which group you're in. And one of the questions is how many students are in class?
How many students are in class? Well, in the first year, in the first semester, we have both groups together, so that would be 112 students from September to December. But then following that, the groups split up because the RGR group is going out on placement in January. So then the UGR group is down to being about 72 students. And then you come together in final year because you'll notice that the RGR and UGR students are all doing those final year modules together. So you're back then in being a big cohort of 112 again.
Yes, so the RGRs are always with a cohort of UGRs, whereas the UGRs sometimes are with RGRs and sometimes on their own.
Yeah.
Okay. Any recommendations for psychology or sociology texts to read?
Well, sociology. I think there is a book, Sociology for Social Work, which you should look at. I mean, what I'll do is I'll put the full reference of it up in the chat here as we go along. And what I'll do is I'll also just double check with my colleague Lisa, who takes the psychology module, what her core text would be. So I will have a look at that and put the answer to that particular question up in the chat box, if that's okay.
Yeah, perfect. And how can we access the books that are being recommended? I've suggested Amazon's a good place to start because often people sell them secondhand.
Yeah, that's where I would go 100%. And those books aren't that expensive. I think the Triffic book, or Terrific as the students refer to Pamela, there are a couple of different variations of that book. That book should be very easy to get. The Barbara Teeter book, I was looking at it the other day. I think that book is about £30 or something like that on Amazon. So, but as you say, Audrey, I would be looking at those on Amazon.
And the last question for you, Joe, thank you, is international practice. I take it that's in relation to the international opportunities. Which countries in Europe would be on offer?
Well, we have links with Münster, University of Münster in Germany. We also have links with the University of Alicante in Spain, and we also have links in Slovenia, the University of Ljubljana. But my colleague, Jerry Marshall, is the Erasmus coordinator. So what I can do as well is I can put up in the chat some other examples of the European links that we have between now and the end of the evening, if that's okay. But those are just ones off the top of my head.
And registration with the libraries, including the healthcare, has to be whenever you're a registered student. Then you wouldn't be registering beforehand. Is another question, isn't that right?
Yeah.
And specific days that you'll be in, or does it change each semester? It changes each semester.
Yeah,
There's another question coming through there. When are the international opportunities?
they will be. I mean, we have a very well-oiled way of communicating with the students in regard to email and other opportunities that we communicate through our modules. So, I mean, the Portland opportunity in California, that occurs every August period, and our colleague Anne Campbell promotes that in the second semester, as far as I remember. But as you know, during the induction period, you're told about these, and as the deadlines approach, you will all be communicated with and given plenty of advance information about how we select and what the opportunities are, and so on and so forth.
Great, Joe. Thank you. I'll let you out of the hot seat now.
Okay. And as I say, I'll do some further research here just as we're talking, and I'll put some of the answers up in the chat box.
I've also suggested if we want to attach a reading list, we can send it out with the slides next week.
Totally. So I'm going to switch off now, and then we can come back in if there's anything further that you need my help with.
Super. Thank you.
Okay. Bye.
Okay, thanks, Joe. My name's Lorna Montgomery, and I'm the Director of Practice Learning, which means that I take responsibility for student placements throughout your degree. I want to add my thanks to Joe, and my welcome to Audrey and Joe. It's really nice. Well, I can't see you, but it's nice for you to join us and to say congratulations for getting this far. When people think about placements, I know it's both very daunting, but I think also very exciting. It's definitely a core part of your learning. If you are a two-year route student, your placement will cover half of your degree. And if you are a three-year student, your placement will cover a third of your degree. So it's a really very significant part of it. I'm just going to talk you through a little bit about what placement is, how placements are allocated, and a little bit about the expectations of you in placement. I've picked up a couple of questions already, I think from Jacinta and Bethany, so I'll address those as we go along. So your fieldwork placement, we refer to that as your practice learning opportunity, or we tend to say your PLO. So what is a PLO? It's a period of time when you will spend, you will work in direct social work practice. So it's not a period of observation, it's a period of practice. So you work directly with individuals, groups and families. Each student will undertake 2 placements, and as far as possible, these will vary. Joe said earlier that it's a generic degree, so you are qualified to work across the spectrum of social work, not just, for example, with adults, not just with children, but across the whole spectrum. And in order to give you experience, we try to ensure that each of your 2 placements are significantly different from the other. One would be in statutory and the other may be in a voluntary sector. One would be working with children and families, and one would be working with adults. You have a very dedicated support team during your time on placement, and that includes you're being supervised by a qualified social worker, and this, we refer to this as your practice teacher, and you're also being supported by your university tutor. And Joe has talked us through the types of things that you will be learning in your academic environment, and the placement is essentially an opportunity to put these into practice. So to apply your knowledge, skills and values, and think about your ethics in social work practice. Okay, moving on. When will your placement take place? These dates are provisional, but it is likely that if you're in your 2-year route, your first placement will be in January 2021, probably starting around the 5th of January until the 7th of May. If you're in the 3-year route, your first placement will be in August of next year, running from August to December. And then for each group, your final placement is likely to take place around January. Well, it will be in January, around the 5th of January to the 28th of May 2022. I know it seems a very long way away, but as Joe said, time will fly in. The really important thing to say is that you're required to have 100% attendance on placement. So it's really important that you don't book holidays during this period. Yeah, and that means, you know, not getting married, not having weekends away unplanned. You really have to think about, almost like a job, you're dedicated to attending placement every day of your allocated placement time. Okay. So what is expected of you on placement? I think the first thing to say about that is that we, myself and my colleagues in the university, will talk you through very carefully what the expectations are. For level 2, you will have a beginning ability to apply values, knowledge and skills, and this will be defined very clearly for you as you start placement. And then, understandably then, level 3, it's a much more integrated, confident and competent application of values, knowledge and skills. So that by the end of your 3 years or 2 years, you're leaving placement prepared to start practice. Often within the next couple of weeks of leaving placement, you move into as a qualified social worker. Assessment is continuous. We call that formative. So you will know how you're doing week by week. Most students have weekly supervision and they find out on a very regular basis their strengths and limitations and how they develop those. We then have a final assessment at the end of placement where students are told whether they have passed or failed. There's not a grade given for placement, just a pass or fail. Important to say that, you know, the vast majority of students pass placement without any difficulty. You will be required to work about 37.5 hours per week. Well, actually 37.5 hours per week, but some of that will be 9 to 5. Some of it may be more flexible. For example, if you're in a residential setting, you might be required to work shifts and evenings. Okay, I'm sure there may be questions for that, but we will, I can pick those up as we go along. I think I've had two. This is a question from Jacinta about whether you needed to find your own practice learning opportunity, and from Bethany, and I think maybe others, whether you can be placed near to home. I think the first thing to say about that is that we all know that students are anxious about where they are on placement, and most of the anxieties revolve around distance from home. And so, you know, we do our very best to ensure that students are placed in settings that are as convenient for them as possible. But I also have to say that there are no guarantees. It's important to point out that Queen's, that I don't allocate the placement. Queen's don't have that authority or autonomy. We're part of a regional placement allocation process. We're part of a regional partnership called the Northern Ireland Degree in Social Work Partnership. It's made up of the two universities, Queen's and Ulster, the health and social care sector, voluntary sectors, etc. And we all get together, and there is a very clear, fair and transparent process of placement allocation. I think there's something like 500 placements allocated across Northern Ireland each year. So I'm not going to go into the detail of how we allocate placements, just to say that that process will be shared with you very clearly. Issues such as caring responsibilities, disability, conflicts of interest, personal safety issues, whether you can drive and have access to a car, are taken into consideration. But you'll learn much more about that when you start, quite quickly after you start. Actually, I'll be talking you through that. Okay, so we're nearly finished this bit. Just, students want to know what types of settings will they be working in on placement. I've just given you some examples there. I'm not going to go through them all in detail. I think just to say that many people, perhaps most students, are based in social services teams, such as teams working with children, fostering and adoption, working with adults who have mental health problems and young people with mental health problems, working in teams with physical disability or learning disability. We also have some placements in youth justice and the probation board, and some places with the education authority. And finally, we have a range of placements across the voluntary sector. For example, charities working with people with mental health problems or offenders. So I'm almost finished. I suppose I just want to end with saying that we evaluate placements carefully and we take feedback from students. And something like 98% of those students evaluate their placements as either excellent or very good. Students will always come back to us and say when they're reflecting on their social work degree that this was the probably the strongest learning opportunity for them. I put up there some feedback from previous years about students' experience on placement. And generally there's a sense of it was a really positive learning experience for me. I felt a bit overwhelmed, but I loved it. Okay, I think I've covered the main information. I'm sure there are lots of questions, so Audrey, I don't know if you want to read any of those out to me.
So there we go. So what happens if you fail your placement?
Okay, so I suppose to be reassuring, the vast majority of students, so 95% of students pass their placement. For those people who have failed their placement, there's some kind of nuanced guidelines on this, but to a large extent, you get one more attempt to resit it. So for each failed placement, there is another opportunity to resit.
Okay, thank you. Do you work over bank holidays, for example, St. Patrick's Day when you're on placement?
We try to give students bank holidays off placement. It depends to some extent on the needs of the agency. So you may be in a residential home where you're asked to work on St. Patrick's Day, but you'll get the day off in lieu of that.
Great. How will coronavirus affect international students starting in September, or teaching and placements?
So I think we might address this at the end. In terms of coronavirus and placements, I am working closely with those students that are due to go out on placement in August of this year, and we're looking at whether or not they can go out as planned in August, or whether there might be some delay to that. I just don't know how that's going to impact January start on placement. I think that placements will probably go ahead as normal, but we don't have any guarantees of that.
Great, thank you, Lorna. If you avail of international opportunities, do you carry out a placement in that country?
That's a really good question. For the moment, no. So your international opportunities don't include your placement. I should say that we do have some placements in Dublin. So the voluntary sector organisation Extern offer 2 or 3 placements in Dublin for your first placement.
Great. And how many days a week is placement?
Well, it's like a full working week, so 37.5 hours, usually 5 days per week.
And if you're already registered with NISC through your current job, do you have to register again for Queen's?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Yes, you need to be registered as a social work student, not as a social care worker.
Great. And in RGR, do you return to uni in first year after you've completed your placement?
I think you don't. Is that right? Is that right, Audrey?
Yeah, you finish your placement in May, and that's you finish then. You have the June, July. You do your assignments obviously in June, and then you go through the exam board, and then that's you then not back until September teaching. Okay, for undergraduate students, is there a placement in first year or does it start in second year?
It starts in second year. You will be asked to do practice development days. So there are a number of days that all students are asked to do, which is about, it's self-directed, and it's about helping them to engage with the kind of social work communities, but they're individual days that students organise themselves. And
I think generally they're expected to do about 10 in the first year, isn't that right? If your child falls ill during placement, is there any protocol?
So again, I don't want to give a quick answer to that because it's nuanced and detailed. You are required to have 100% attendance. So if you need to be off sick for any particular reason or as a carer, there needs to be some opportunity to try, and I think if it's up to 10 days, we can try and have you make the time up. If it's beyond 10 days, then the placement is not considered viable.
Okay. And is your chosen area an interest, chosen area of work, an interest taken into consideration for allocating the PLOs?
It is for your, it is for your second placement.
And is the placement paid or volunteering work?
Yeah, that's a really good question. It's not, I mean, you get your bursary, so there's no additional payment for placement.
Great. And that's all your questions then, Lorna.
Okay,
so if any more
come
through, obviously we can pick them up at the end.
Yeah, that's super. Thank you very much. And I'm just before I hand over to Sandra Bloomer, who's the admissions manager, I want to say that the next couple of slides provide, I'm just going to move on to them. They provide a link for one of our previous students called Aaron Rodgers, who's going to be talking about his experience of being a student, social work student at Queen's. I think you just click this link. We'll not do it now, but would encourage you to do it after the presentation. Okay, over to Sandra.
Hello everybody, it's great to see that so many applicants. I can see there's 120 plus have joined us this evening. I suppose what I would like to say is I'm a little bit disappointed that I'm not actually seeing you face to face, because this is normally my only opportunity to meet with successful offer holders, but maybe at some stage, you never know, further down the line slightly. But it really is great that we've been able to host this event this evening virtually. So I know I don't know about yourselves, but I'm learning a lot about technology over the last 6 weeks or so. So I just want to start by saying well done. You're in a very privileged position. There's an awful lot of applicants at the moment that would love to be in the position you're in. And as you all know, if any of you have ever spoken to me or Tamara, social work is competitive. And so really well done to you for being at this stage, obviously, and hopefully we will see you at Queen's in September. So I'm really just going to spend the next few minutes talking about what I think is important for you and some of the practical things that you need to know as you go forward if you decide to choose Queen's as your obviously your firm choice or insurance choice. And I'd be happy then to take any questions at the end of the presentation as well. Now, as I'm sure every one of you will know, I think I got a message on Saturday morning at just after 9 o'clock from one of the team to tell me that they now had transmitted all of my decisions to UCAS. So they were processed on the 2nd of May, and that was obviously for the 3-year and the 2-year. So I'm sure, I know I did have one email, probably within about an hour of the decisions going out from an applicant. So I'm sure, and I hope there was a lot of excitement at the weekend and that you get some chance to at least celebrate that. Obviously, once you have been made an offer, whether that is conditional or whether it's unconditional, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute, you do need to make one of 3 replies. And basically, your first choice is your firm choice. So I suppose with social work, it's one of the most diverse range of applicants. And because we also have a graduate route, there are many applicants who have already taken their qualifications. So they may be sitting with unconditional offers. And that is what we call, if you choose that as your firm choice, that will be what we call as a UF. Or indeed, most applicants are still sitting with some conditions, and that will be what we call a CF, your conditional firm. Your insurance choice then is your backup choice. So that is your second choice. And obviously, if you've had, so sometimes what might happen is somebody might have a conditional firm, but for some other reason, they have a non-conditional insurance, so or they will have a CI. But in most cases, with most courses, it's CF and CI, so you have 2 choices. What I should say is that if you have a non-conditional offer, you will only have one choice, and that is a non-conditional firm. So just obviously remember that. Once you obviously are thinking, or when you're thinking about replying and obviously thinking about your firm and insurance choices, I realise that most of the people probably joining us this evening, there are 5 choices at UCAS, may all be social work. They may have something else like psychology or sociology or criminology, something like that in the background, or law. But obviously when you're considering your firm choice, it needs to be your preferred course, because you are, once you choose that, you are committed to that choice. And obviously you need to be realistic there as well in relation to qualifications, etc., and what you feel is achievable. And obviously I will just say at this point that for a lot of A-level people, B-Tech people, etc., grades will be calculated grades this year. And we will use those calculated grades, and they will be published around the same time as results would have been scheduled to be published this year. And I know the graduates, all universities are taking steps to ensure that their final year students have either a degree awarded or we've already been told that some institutions will say deemed to have deserved, and we will accept things like that as well. But if you have any query, I will give you an email address at the end, so please contact us. Your insurance choice then is your backup choice, and that is really your second choice. Quite often that will be a course that is lower grades, but obviously if you're a graduate, I think across most of the institutions, it will be a 2-2 is the minimum requirement there. But obviously sometimes, for example, for A-levels, our offer is ABB, but other places may be slightly different than that. So your backup choice is important, because if for some reason you don't meet the grades, if you've got a conditional offer for your first choice, then obviously your insurance choice will come into play. But hopefully in the main, most of our applicants for social work will be picked up on their firm choice there. Now, when do you need to reply? Now, the initial UCAS deadline for us making decisions was today, actually, and with obviously COVID-19, that has been extended, and the extension is now runs until the 20th of May. So obviously you've received your offers from Queen's at the moment. You may have received all of your decisions, but if you haven't, universities do have to make any decisions by the 20th of May for those applications that were received by the 15th of January. And obviously as a social work applicant, you would have had your application in no later than the 15th of January. So if once you get all of your decisions, there has been a slight extension and all applicants are being asked to respond by the 18th of June. So you will have to choose your firm and insurance choice by the 18th of June. UCAS will tell you about when you actually do have to reply. So please look out for that, just in case you miss the deadline. And what I should say is it will be 6 p.m. on the 18th of June, so just bear that in mind, because anything after that time simply declines by default. And you will choose your firm and insurance choice. So when you're choosing them, you will reply using your UCAS track account there. Now, after you reply, so when we get to the end of June or early July, towards mid-July maybe, all applicants that are holding an offer with Queen's, so whether you're firm or insurance, we send out a letter to all those students. And in that letter, we provide a link to a lot of really useful information. And you'll see it listed there. I'm not going to go through it all, but it is all very important information as you think about obviously progressing to university there. And what I would always say is, please ask your mum, your dad, your guardian, your boyfriend, your husband, your wife, girlfriend, etc., to just make themselves also familiar with the information there, because I know sometimes in August when results are coming out, or in June indeed if you're getting results slightly earlier, it is sometimes quite stressful and you do forget where you maybe have seen information before. But the key things for you are to obviously, it will tell you about our procedures for August and September. It'll tell you about enrolment and registration, and it would also tell you about our welcome and orientation there. It will also give you useful contacts. So if you ever need to contact us, we do have a call centre which operates from A-level day, publication of A-levels, which is the 13th of August, and that call centre actually operates for 5 days. However, also I will give you an email address, which is a dedicated email address at the end for social workers. And to be honest, it's probably the best way of trying to communicate with us if you need to during the summer period there. Now, obviously, we will get to August, and the reason I'm referring to August is because August will be the last results we receive. So the A-level results are the last results to normally be received by the university. So we'll receive A-levels, we'll receive Irish Leaving Cert, BTEC OCR from UCAS, so there's no need for you to send those. However, I do appreciate that there are a number of applicants, as I well know, because I've obviously processed the offers, that are taking access courses. There are a couple of people I think that either have or taking Cert HE in Combined Social and Behavioural Sciences. There are a number of people with foundation degrees and a number of people with honours degrees. And there might be other applicants who have qualifications that lie outside kind of A-level BTEC OCR. And those applicants will have to send their results to us. Now, we will give you instructions in June or July when we're giving you the information about obviously the new academic year on how you can send those results to us. But you obviously can also send them directly to us as soon as they're available. And sometimes people ask, how can I send them? And obviously at the moment we don't know where we're going to be in August. but they can be scanned and emailed to us, or if someone can take a good quality photograph and email them to us, that's absolutely fine as well. So once we've got the results, so this is really round those that have conditions to their offer at the moment. So we can make one of two decisions. We can either accept our applicant or we can process an unsuccessful. Now, for social work, there might be a very small number of applicants who just have fallen slightly below the conditions of the offer that they were made, and those may be pending for a few days, and we do try to clear those up as quickly as we possibly can. If for some reason you're unsuccessful for your firm choice, so this again is only if you have conditional offer. If you're unsuccessful, then your CS choice, CI choice comes into play at that point. If for some reason your CF and CI are both unsuccessful, then you're eligible for clearing. And what I should note is, but this, I've been working in Queen's for 13 years and I don't remember this ever having happened, but if you're unsuccessful for social work, both in your firm and insurance, you unfortunately wouldn't be eligible to be reconsidered for the current year. So you would be looking at reapplying. I think the important thing to note here is you will see that I say at the bottom that all offers are subject to verification of qualifications and registration with the Northern Ireland Social Care Council. Now, a number of you will see in your offers that we have asked for verification of things like your degree, if you've already completed it, because we maybe have had your transcript, but we don't have your degree certificate. Some people will have been asked for confirmation of GCSE Maths or indeed Maths and English, and that may be because we've got a statement of results from your school, but we don't actually have your certificate. So again, we might have asked for that. Some people will have been asked for confirmation of a change of name, and normally that's because someone has got married, so it may be through a marriage certificate, and that is because maybe your GCSE qualifications, or indeed sometimes your degree has been obviously completed when you had a different name. So we do need to verify that the certificates we have are obviously the correct. So a number of you will have these conditions to your offer. What I would say to some people is anyone who's doing an access course and who maybe is saying, oh my goodness, I don't have GCSE Maths, most of you will have NICATS Maths within the access course. So if you don't have GCSE Maths and you are taking NICATS Maths, that is acceptable in lieu of GCSE Maths there. So that's just to cover that for you. Then obviously we get to August and the procedures there. So as I've said before, we accept those who precisely meet, and indeed many people will exceed the conditions of their offer, and they will be accepted. When you're accepted, you do need to complete something called an AS12, and this includes our UF applicants. So if you've had a non-conditional offer at the moment because you've already completed your qualifications, you will also need to complete that AS12. And that is simply will go to our website. We will give you instructions when we send out the information in June. It will be in the information there how you do that, and it is a 30-second job. So you simply go on, they asked you for things like your name, your UCAS personal ID, and just for you to indicate if you're accepting the offer that we have confirmed. Please don't forget to do it. I have got to admit, social workers are normally brilliant at this, and I very seldom have to remind social workers that they need to go on and do it. It's just what happens is when you complete that process, that then allows us to know, that's really you saying to us, thank you for confirming my place. I am telling you now that I want to accept that place. That's my final point where I'm telling you that I want to accept it. And as I say, it's a 30-minute job, and that actually, what I would say changes you from applicant status to obviously student status, and that will generate all your information about registration and enrolment. And as I've said previously, decisions on borderline grades are normally held pending availability, but I try to make those as quick as I possibly can. We do post our decisions on our website. So on A-level morning, which is the 13th of August, that is the first morning we will start to publish all of our decisions there. And all you simply need is your UCAS personal ID to see if your place has been confirmed there. Now, my last slide, I just want to show you some other important information. Obviously, I've already said that your offers are subject to verification of your qualifications, and I've gone over those that I think will need to be sent in. If anybody has any questions, please feel free to ask. Your declaration for your placement learning opportunity, which the school will provide to you. We've already talked about NISC registration. The process might be slightly different this year. Normally NISC, I think, attends registration and enrolment. So obviously if we are there in September, they will hopefully obviously attend as they normally will do. And then for those that are domiciled in Northern Ireland, we do have a student incentive scheme. And I'm sorry for this really long link, but I did have quite a lot of difficulty finding it, and that link does take you through to information about the student incentive scheme. And you will be sent the information once you've been admitted in August, late August, early September. We will send details to you from the school about the student incentive scheme. So don't panic that you haven't got it at the moment, or you don't get it over the next few weeks. If you have any inquiries following this evening, so if you go away and feel, oh my goodness, I should have asked something, or I forgot to ask something, please feel free to contact us, and any inquiries should be directed just for my own attention. And we, as I say, have a dedicated email account, which is admissionsbsw@qub.ac.uk. So I just want to finish off. That's my details, and obviously the email account address there. I'm sure no one ever uses a fax now. We do very occasionally get someone asking, can they fax something in? But it really just remains for me to say good luck to you all. I hope whatever you choose, obviously we would love you to choose Queen's, but I hope everything goes really well over the next few months for you. Thank you.
You're all very quick to try and run away, aren't you? As in previous years, Sandra, you're very popular. So what's the deadline for accepting the offer?
18th of June.
Thank you. In what circumstances would NISC not approve registration?
Well, I think that's not one that I can answer, Audrey. That probably needs to be one of yourselves, I think.
Okay, we'll come back to that. I've provided evidence of GCSE results, but do not have original certificates. Awarding bodies are closed. What's your advice? How can I apply for replacements?
Well, awarding bodies now should still be operating remotely like ourselves. So we haven't been told that any awarding bodies are closed at the moment. But obviously we would normally be recommending that you contact the awarding body for a certificate. But if the awarding body is coming back and saying they can't provide it, please come back to me, and then we'll have a look at what we already have at the moment.
Great. Okay, and somebody else has said that they have the transcript but can't access their certificate. Will there be any allowance for this delay if not sent by your deadline?
We certainly will allow. We've never been known to say to someone, we're going to withdraw you because you haven't provided. And indeed, last year I had one applicant who is now a first year student and had great difficulty, but we did work with her and she finally was able to get it. And there are always ways around it. So we can, I would just like to reassure you that will not prevent you as long as we can get some confirmation.
Okay, somebody just come back in and said CCEA definitely suspended. It's on their website, so maybe you just need to check that out and put something up in the frequently asked questions then on Queen's, Sandra, if you get some more information on that. Okay.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
I've completed a foundation degree. Can I apply for student finance? I'll come back to that one. Oh, there's quite a few finance questions, so we'll come back to those. If you have an unconditional offer, do you just make a firm choice?
That's correct. When you have an unconditional offer, you don't have an insurance choice. You just have a firm choice.
Okay. How do I submit evidence of grades?
You can either scan and email them, or if you can take, I mean, I don't know, but most people have smartphones now, and they're very good. They take very good quality pictures. So as long as you can take a good quality picture that is readable, you can actually email that to us as well. We'll be absolutely happy with that.
Okay, great. What percentage do you need to get with the maths in the access course?
Just 40% is the pass mark, and that's why we don't specify a percentage, because we say successful completion with either an average of 70% for a QUB access course, or 70% in level 3 units if it's a UU access course. But obviously you will have to pass every module within that, so all we require is 40%, and that is why it's not specified.
Great. I might be 20 credits short of entry requirements. Will I still have a chance of studying at Queen's?
Now, what type of qualification is that? Do you mean I would need to know, when we're talking about 20 credits short, that would indicate to me that that's potentially part of a degree. So maybe if the person would like to come back in and say, what type of a qualification are they taking?
Great, okay. If you have an unconditional offer for the RGR, are there any more qualifications you're required to send across?
No, if you've been made an unconditional offer, that means you've got your 2-2, your minimum of a 2-2 degree in a cognate subject. You've got your English and your maths, so there's no other academic requirements. If we would not make an unconditional offer unless you don't need any other academic requirements.
Okay. Emily has just put up here BTEC level 3 health and social care, so presume that's the 20 credits short.
Yeah, now the BTEC level 3, it depends, Emily, on whether you're doing 2 A levels and a BTEC level 3 subsidiary diploma or a national award in health and social care, or if it's a BTEC extended diploma in health and social care. But if it is a BTEC extended diploma, that is made up of 180 credits, and we will require a total of 180 credits. But I think what you might be asking me is that your offer would be based on 120 credits at distinction and 60 credits at merit. So what you're maybe thinking is that you might not just quite have the 120 at distinction. So what we do is we look to average those out. So I think if Emily wants to maybe email me just after this, Audrey, then I would have a better understanding of her qualification, and hopefully can give her a more tailored response at that stage.
Great. And how would grades work? I was asked for a distinction, B, but hopefully receive, for example, a distinction star BC.
Right. Well, that is not the offer we would have made. I assume the applicant is taking, I think the applicant is taking probably 2 A levels and a BTEC subsidiary diploma. So what we say is we asked for the A level offer is ABB. And when someone is taking 2 A levels and a BTEC subsidiary diploma, we asked for the 2 Bs in the A level, and then we asked for the equivalent of a grade A from the BTEC. And our offer would say 60 credits at distinction. We don't base our offer on one overall grade. So that would really mean that you would need a distinction in each unit. Now, If you got an A in your one of your A levels, an A and a B, well then we would be able to look at a slightly lower combination in your BTEC. But again, that applicant might want to email me so that I could give them a more tailored response.
Great, thank you. I will receive my results before the deadline on 18th of June. What will I do, or who do I contact regarding this?
Now, the thing about it is this applicant saying that she's receiving her results on the 18th of June. What happens is obviously you will have to choose your firm, and if it's unconditional, you'll have to choose your firm. If it's conditional, you'll have to choose your conditional and your insurance no later than 6 p.m. on the 18th of June. But we don't have to have your results in by that date. But if you have them earlier, then please send them in the way that I've indicated. So I'm assuming that's probably someone who's taking, for example, something like a foundation degree or a degree, etc. And they know that they're going to have their results earlier. So they should send them in once they have them available.
Great. If you're resetting GCSE Maths via college, but the exams have been cancelled, is there any other way the Maths will be accepted?
Our understanding is that for those that are taking GCSEs, that the awarding bodies will award a calculated grade. And unfortunately, we do require GCSE Maths, and unfortunately we are not in a position, for example, to accept essential skills in application of number. So we will need either GCSE Maths, or if someone's taking an access course, NICATS Maths within that. But my understanding is that the awarding bodies will award a calculated grade. And those will come out on the date that the GCSEs were meant to come out. And I think it's the Thursday after A levels. I think it's the 20th of August.
Okay, grand, thank you. If QUB is the insurance choice and the grades of the firm are not met, does the applicant still have an equal chance of being accepted onto the course if the grades and conditions are met, even though it wasn't placed first?
Okay, so what happens is if you have a conditional, just obviously I will stress this only applies to people with conditions. If you've got a CF and a CI, so you've got a conditional firm and a conditional insurance, and for some reason you don't meet the conditions of your offer for your firm choice, your insurance choice automatically comes into play. So in other words, if your firm choice has unfortunately got to process an unsuccessful decision, your insurance choice, or your backup as we call it, will immediately then change to your firm choice. So it's basically upgraded. So it goes from CI to CF, and then the institution makes the decision. Now, what I will say is that if someone meets the conditions of their offer for their insurance, we would not be in a position to turn that down. So sometimes what happens is maybe someone is holding a pending offer for a firm choice, and the insurance choice has said, well, actually you meet the grades for us. So that will sit there until the firm choice makes their final decision. And obviously if the firm choice accepts, well, then the insurance choice basically disappears because it is your backup. So the insurance choice will come into play if your firm choice is not in a position to accept you, and then your insurance choice becomes basically your firm at that point. And providing you've met the conditions that we're accepting at that stage, we would be processing a non-conditional accept at that stage if you've met the conditions.
Okay, great. Let me see, there's some more finance ones we'll come back to. The minimum requirements for the RGR programme, is it a 2-1 or a 2-2?
It is a 2 into sorry, which programme? The RGR?
The RGR programme, yeah.
The RGR programme is the requirement is a 2-2 in a cognate degree. The UGR, if you have progressed to degree, It is also a 2-2, but the difference is that you do not need it in a cognate subject. However, there are some people, so I don't want people out there to panic. There are some people who I know this year have taken non-cognate degrees, but either had a PGCE or had a relevant postgraduate diploma or master's, and that was considered in lieu of the cognate degree.
Okay, great. Let me see. Oh, applied for the UGR and the RGR course, offered a place on the UGR. Is there any chance of moving to RGR if a place becomes available?
Yeah, I would suspect the fact that you got an offer for the UGR, that you probably didn't miss the RGR by that much, but we will be writing out early. We're already working on them, but it is quite a lot of work. I'll be writing out early next week to those that are eligible to be considered on the reserve list. So those people who we will write to you this year, we normally ask you to send back a reply slip, but obviously because we're not in the office at the moment, what we've done is we put together a little form. So people will fill that form in to say we're still interested. So I would imagine that applicant will get a letter saying that obviously they've had an offer for the UGR, but we weren't in a position to consider them for the RGR just at this time. But we may be in a position later in August, but obviously that can't be guaranteed. But and I do every year normally pick up, but it is a very small number. So people can move from the UGR to the RGR, providing they are the next person on the reserve list for the RGR.
Great, thank you. How many students are on the RGR programme this year?
Our split is we have 112 full-time places, and normally what we try to do is sit in the RGR. The Department of Health says around 40 for the RGR, so we sit somewhere between 40 and 42, and then depending, obviously if there's 40 in the RGR, there's 72 for the UGR. And if there's 42 for the RGR, obviously it is 70 for the RGR, it's 70 then for the UGR. So we have gone, I think last year we admitted 43 on the RGR and then 69 to the UGR programme.
Great, okay. Do Access students need to provide evidence of GCSE and A-level grades?
If we have needed them, we will have asked for them. We do as normal practice when we're sending out a consent and declaration, and everybody on the call will be familiar with the consent and declaration that went away out at the beginning. We would have asked people who had English and Maths GCSEs listed on their application for confirmation. However, if someone is taking an Access course, and Maths is within it, and it will also compensate for English. Don't panic if you don't have GCSE English and Maths, but if you have it, we will have asked for verification of it.
Okay, great. The foundation degree, is the pass mark to get into QUB still 60%?
Yes, the offers that I made are an overall average of 60% and passes in all modules.
Great. And the question about the Maths and the Access course, somebody's come back again and said 40% with Maths and Access. Is that just for the exam or your overall mark?
It's the overall mark. We don't look at the split between exam and assignment. We look at the overall mark. And
Taylor has asked a very good question here. How many spaces are there this year compared to offers?
Well, I think probably what Taylor's asking is how many offers have we made, obviously for the number of places we have. So what we've done is we have made 45 offers for the RGR, because a lot of those are unconditional because students already have their qualifications. For the UGR, I have made 140 offers. But what I will say is that 25 of those also have an offer for the 2 years. So they applied for both the 2 year and the 3 year. And we always advise graduates to do that. because it is possible to get an offer for the 3-year and not the 2-year, as one of the applicants has already said. Actually, they've had an offer for UGR but not RGR, and that is simply because when we've been coming, obviously what happens is everybody is ranked by interview score, and because we have more places for the UGR, the interview score that we stop at is normally slightly lower than the interview score we stop at for the RGR.
Great. And Victoria wants to know, how many applications were there in total?
How many applications? Now, Victoria, you're going to ask me a question that I'm not. Can you just bear with me a moment? And I will try to have a wee look. I know I have it on a report here, but it's not something I have just at hand. So is there anything else there?
No, that was the last question I have for you here. So I'm going to go back then to some of the others to see if they would like to ask questions or answer some of the questions.
Yeah.
So Joe and Lorna, while you look that up there, if that's all right.
Audrey, can I clarify something, please?
Yes.
Is that okay? I'm sitting here with a calendar. I think the level 3 student placement is actually January to May 2023.
Yes, somebody asked me that while you were talking,
Yes.
so I reassured them that they're not all going out together again.
No. So I just make that small amendment to the slides before we send them out.
Great. Does anybody want to talk about registration with NISC, about when that happens, how much it costs? There's a lot of questions about that. Joe,
do you want
or
to
Lorna?
That's not something I'm familiar with, Audrey. I would imagine that would have to happen before the course would start, though. But
it's usually it's week 0. It usually happens with the NISC registration. So you have to be a registered student to be able to register with the Social Care Council as a student social worker. So a lot of people start contacting us now when they accept their offers to say, how can they do this? So it's just to redirect you to the Social Care Council's website and reassure you that that will all be dealt with in your welcome week, which we call week 0 because it's the week before the teaching actually would take place. In terms of cost, I know it's a reduced rate for students, and I'm absolutely rubbish at remembering anything about numbers and money. So again, I would just redirect you to the Social Care Council's website in relation to that. And somebody has asked a question, as you know, about what circumstances would the Social Care Council not approve registration? That's a question that only the Social Care Council can answer for you. And if you have something that would give you concern, I always direct applicants to the Social Care Council directly to talk to them about anything they think might impede registration. But we can never, that's why in our slides we're saying that, you know, things are subject to registration with the Social Care Council. It's not something that we have any control over. So again, there's a very sort of clear process that the Social Care Council follow for registration and any issues that might cause them concern. So I would strongly encourage you to communicate with them at the earliest possible opportunity to discuss any issues you might think there. Thank you, Patricia. £20 for registration for students. The Social Care Council.
Audrey,
it's all different rates. Somebody else has told me that theirs was £33 as a carer. I think ours is 50 as a qualified social worker, so that's why I have absolutely no idea. There's somebody has very kindly provided the link for registration and the costs.
Audrey, I'll just add to that just very quickly to say that you can't go on placement without your NISC registration, and where there are issues, as there sometimes are, we work closely with NISC to discuss those and deal with them where possible.
Somebody's asked a question, thank you for that, Lorna. Somebody's asked a question about flexibility for attendance and about the start date, etc. So the university start date, the first day of teaching is the 21st of September. Somebody's asking, obviously due to the current COVID situation, if primary schools are returning students or their children part-time or reduced hours, or children are still at home, what would be the flexibility? I think there's quite a few people are asking COVID related questions, and I think at this point in time, you know, we can't say anything in relation to that, and the university will obviously keep everyone posted, because obviously we're following government guidance in relation to that. So let me see, was there anything else that was asked? Oh yes, a lot of questions about the bursary, about how quickly you access that. I know that students apply for the bursary. You can apply for it once you've accepted your place. You can go on to the Department of Health website there that Sandra has provided the link to. It provides you with all the information. Information on grants and can you access bursaries, etc. if you're an RGR. Again, there's a separate slideshow that we're going to send to you from our colleague Debbie in student finance, and that will answer all of those questions related to student finance. And if it doesn't answer those questions, Debbie's email address is provided on the slideshow, and that will hopefully enable you to communicate with her directly. But I know if she was here tonight, she would be telling you to engage with her as soon as you know that you're coming to Queen's to study, because there's so much money available to students in terms of grants and bursaries that a lot of students are totally unaware of, and they make assumptions that because you've got a degree already that you're not eligible for a lot of the finance and social work training is exempt from a lot of that. So it means you can reapply for student loans, etc. So people are asking me about, can you get your interview marks? Sandra, would you like to answer that one?
Yeah, what I will do is I will tell you the number of applications. I see Emma has, but I have a slightly probably more up-to-date figure because obviously I report on a regular basis on this. But for the 2-year graduate route this year, we had 201 applications. And for the undergraduate 3-year, we had 682 applications. And those applications came from a total of 790 applicants. So that was an increase of 17% on the previous year. Now, so obviously the fact we've got an offer based on the number of applications for 112 places, you can see that you've obviously performed very well. What I will say to you is it is not our practice to give feedback to those that have been successful, and that is across the board in the university. So unfortunately, we wouldn't provide feedback to people who've been successful. We provide feedback to those who've been unsuccessful, but not to those who've been successful.
Okay, great. And somebody's asking there, Joe, maybe this is a question for yourself or Lorna. Welcome week, do we have classes?
I think it's probably too soon for us to. It's probably too soon for us to answer that one. But in Welcome Week, obviously, under normal circumstances, the focus is on generic induction and getting the students sort of inducted not only to the university but to the course, and to enable them to get familiar with their surroundings. Other than that, I can't be any more specific at this point in time, Audrey, as you'll appreciate. Lorna, what would you?
I've nothing to add, Joe. I think you're right. You know, in normal course events, we have classes, but we don't know what's going to happen this year. Yeah.
Great. And in relation to Degree Plus, somebody's asking, a very keen, motivated student is asking, is it too early to ask about it?
In regard to Degree Plus, obviously that's something that we would be talking to students about when they're with us. But at this stage, I suppose, just in regard to that respondent or that question, that's something that we can pick up with that student whenever the course begins, and we'll do that as part of a generic induction about previous experiences that students already have that they're bringing with them, if that's fair enough.
Brilliant. And I see, Patricia, you've replied there. Patricia, for those of you who don't know, is our school manager, is working on the student induction. Okay, yes, yeah. With Central University. So students will all be written to about the arrangements for that. And when will you receive the student finance email? So we're going to circulate the slides from tonight with additional slides from those presenters who were unable to be part of this meeting tonight. So that was the Disability and Wellbeing Services and the Student Finance.
Audrey, could I maybe just go back to the question where someone had asked if they could get their interview score? So
Yes.
while we don't give out interview scores to successful applicants, what I will say is the interview was marked out of 40. And to receive an offer for the RGR, you required a minimum score of 29. And to receive an offer for the UGR, you required a minimum score of 27. So that might help people to obviously gauge that they obviously were within those.
Okay, great. So Carrie Ann's asked a question here about deadline for plan for funds was the 28th of May. I'm not familiar with those deadlines, but I will certainly send you on the link for Debbie, and you can email her directly about that. Jacinta, you've said for Northern Ireland, I thought it was the 22nd of May, so I'm not too sure about all of that. As I say, I'll send you on Debbie's email address and her slides. Emma, can you confirm when those would be able to be circulated to those who are registered for tonight?
Yeah, we can send them out on Tuesday morning. So just the recording takes a while to download and come across to me, and then we'll send it across for any editing and any amends that needs to be done. So Tuesday morning.
Oh, can we send out the slides and these additional slideshows beforehand, just so that people have them, particularly the finance and disability services ones?
Yeah, we can certainly send out slides prior to that. Yeah. Great,
that would be fine. I'm just hoping that I've answered or identified everybody's questions. And I see there, somebody said it was very informative and they're very excited. So that was our motivation and that was our hope for tonight. Just in closing, I would like to say a huge thank you to everyone who participated tonight, everybody who listened in, and all those who contributed to it. It is great to have been able to actually facilitate this for you all too. So, and I just suppose we just want to finish. We had our exam board on Monday, which was an extraordinary exam board, and it was to allow our social work students to get into the field today. You know, so they finished placement early. They put themselves forward for going out to help address the shortage of staff and just the crisis that's happening out there in the health and social care community. And there's going to be lots of press coverage about that tomorrow. And it would be great if you could follow up on that, and hopefully it will make you feel very, very proud to be engaging in a social work career. And it certainly makes me feel very proud to have been a social worker for the last 25 years. And I'm sure I can say the same for my colleagues as well. But if anybody has anything else they want to say, please feel free to say. Otherwise, it's back to Emma then to take control.
Yeah, thank you everyone for tuning in, and thanks to Sandra, Joe and Lorna and Audrey for facilitating this. It was really informative. I know I've learned a lot. But yeah, you have all the details, and if you need anything further, feel free to contact any of us. We'd be more than delighted to help. That's great. I hope everyone stays safe and enjoys their evening.